my name is Debbie and I am the L&D Digital Strategy Lead at Hotelplan UK. We are a group of specialist tourism, should I say? Get my words out this morning. You might know some of our brands, Ingham, Santa's Lapland, Explore and In Travel. And before I dive into how we've been driving a skills-first approach at Hotelplan UK, I just wanted to understand a little bit more about where some of you are at on your L&D journey. So I'm going to do a little bit of a raise of hands or nods of heads here, but raise your hand if you currently have a learning platform that your people see more as somewhere they have to go to do training, things like compliance, cybersecurity. I'm seeing a few hands go up around the room. And what about those of you that have structured programs in place? So you've designed something that's specifically for a group of people to meet a business need, a bit like leadership programs or sales programs. A few nods of the head going on there. And then my all-time favorite one is training needs analysis. And I think I've definitely been here at one point or another, but nod your head or put your hand up if you've ever done training needs analysis that feel a bit more like order taking, end up being a long list of courses that, let's face it, most of our budgets make a little dent in. And finally, competency frameworks. Raise your hands if you've got competency frameworks in your business. They normally took us quite a long time to make. And if we're lucky, get dusted off once, maybe twice a year when it comes down to PDRs or PDPs. Seeing quite a few people that have definitely been on the same page as me at one point or another. And it really got me starting to think when we were looking at some of these things and looking at trying to change some of our culture are these things actually giving our businesses a return on investment? Are they actually making us as L&D professionals and teams an investable team? And it's something I think we really want to try and do more of, is make ourselves really investable in the workplace. So when we were looking at trying to change some of our learning, it all really started with our engagement survey. Now, some of you might look at this and think that's not a bad engagement survey score, but actually we really wanted to look at this and go, how can we make this even better? At the end of the day, we're talking about people's development. And so when we were looking at this, we were in a stage where we'd put in a very successful leadership and management program. We'd been delivering compliance training. Our training needs analysis did look a little bit more and feel to us a little bit more like order taking. And we knew we needed to do something very different if we wanted people to really understand their skills in particular. Skills are really important to people. They're your capital. They're the thing that you can take with you. So we wanted to change how people were thinking when it came to their development. And this led me to asking our senior leadership one question. Did we want to build a strategy that would help our people now with their current development? Or did we actually want to build a strategy that was going to grow and develop with our vision, our people, and the very quick moving digital world around us? And we can all probably agree it's quite hard to keep up with that at the moment. So with that in mind, the answer to that came in the form of a learning experience platform. But for us, it couldn't just be any learning experience platform. It wasn't about just improving their experience when it came to learning. It was about changing their mindset, getting them to really think differently about learning. And when we wanted them to think a little bit differently about learning, we wanted to be able to support any type of development. And that meant that the platform we were looking at had to be able to support what I like to call the 3 pillars of development. Now, when we think about development, we tend to think about progression. Everyone wants to kind of climb the career ladder. That's the first thing that tends to come to most people's minds. But what we also wanted to start looking at was diversifying skills. So if we think about it now, we live longer, which means we are working longer. And we now have multi-generational work people in our workforce. So we really need to start thinking about how we can offer development at different stages. If we take the third quarter of people's life, around 50, it used to be at that point that we started to think about slowing down. We were thinking about retirement. now people are really starting to think about what's next. What else could I do? What could I change? So we wanted to start thinking about how we could diversify that for them. And then the final one to this is one I think that most people tend to forget about. And it's the group of people that actually love what they're doing. They are where they want to be in their career. And so we need to focus on how we can upskill them. It's around bringing in, actually making sure they understand what they need for their role and what they need for their job that they're currently in, but also about making sure we're giving them the tools and the knowledge to be able to continue doing that job as the world around them changes. Now, you might be thinking that's quite a lot and that's quite a mindset shift to make, but on top of that, we also wanted to change how people were accessing learning. So if we think about the world around us at the moment, how we're absorbing knowledge, if I asked you a question and sent you off to research it, you'll probably go Google, TikTok, YouTube. That's our first thought process. We have knowledge at our fingertips. So what we need to start thinking about as L&D professionals is how we can bring knowledge into the flow of work. And that was something else that was really important to us. We needed to be able to bring the knowledge, the learning to where our people were. They needed to be able to access it when they wanted, where they wanted, and how they wanted. So it was quite a big ask. And when we went out and had a look at market, it was quite a big ask. But we ended up finding a very good platform who are just to the left of me if you want to find out a bit more about them later, but HowNow. Now, HowNow stood out for us because they were on the same journey as us. When it came to people development, they were moving in the same way we were. They were really thinking about how they could do things differently, how they could set people up for the future with their capitals. It was no longer academic or experience-based learning. It was moving into that skills-based agenda. And the thing that really stood out for us is that they wanted to evolve and develop their platform with us. And it wasn't just the case of this is our platform. They really wanted to understand what our people did. So we had our platform provider. Now we had to get our people on board, which, as I can imagine, a lot of you are looking at me going, yeah, that's the hard part. How have you done that part? So when it came to getting our people on board, it was really important to us that they were brought on this journey. So when we were thinking about the fact that we've got our platform provider, the first thought process most people have is, well, let's just announce we've got something new. It's new, it's shiny, that didn't work, let's bring in something else. We didn't want to reinvent. We didn't want to rebrand. It was about actually going, we've listened and we're going to evolve and develop with you. And so earlier I mentioned that we had a leadership program in place. One of the shifts we were making in our business was actually about how people thought about leadership and management. So leadership, we didn't want it to just sit at our management level anymore. Everyone in our company makes an impact. So that means everyone is demonstrating some sort of leadership skills. So we started to introduce a self-leadership model. We also, at the same time, had been shifting and making sure that our people were very familiar with our values. And we were looking at high performing, how we could inset high performing behaviors. So we wanted it to be more about how people thought. So we introduced high performing mindsets and behaviors. So with these two things in mind, that people were now experiencing a slightly different shift in how they were thinking, we wanted to evolve it. So Leadership and Management with Purpose was our management program, otherwise known as LAMP. So as we were taking our people on this journey and we were moving away from leadership just being management, it made sense for LAMP to evolve with it. And LAMP became Learn and Maximize Your Potential. And so it was really important to us, as I said earlier, development is individual. And so it's really important that when we were thinking about development with our people, we were taking them on this journey, and the L&D professionals, we really need to start thinking about, we're not the sole center when it comes to learning. People will learn in different ways. So what we really need to start thinking about when it came to pushing out a new element into their learning, that they could drive that in development. And so their feedback was always important in this process. Their feedback is what made us start to think about how we could evolve development. Their feedback was where we started to really think about how can we roll this out and include them in the process. So when we introduced the evolution of LAMP, we took an approach known as a minimum viable product, MVP, as some of you might know it as. And we did this on purpose to take them on that journey, but also not to overwhelm them. We were getting them to think slightly differently, so we wanted it to be a journey that we could really take them on. So with the minimum viable product, we'd gone for a platform that had a lot of capability. We were thinking about it from the future point of view. So what we really wanted to think about here is how we could introduce that with their journey. And we did that in a 3-phased approach. So the first phased approach was really bringing in the new platform in an environment that they were already comfortable with. We had learning on our intranet, we had some knowledge on our intranet, and they were familiar with doing compliance training. So it made sense to start using the platform in a home that they already knew on the internet basis. And then what we were starting to do is shift that mindset. And that's where we started to introduce the skills side of things. So when it came to the skills side of things, it was really important to us that we started with their current role. So at this stage, we weren't focusing about their future. It wasn't about progression. It wasn't about diversifying. It was about their current roles and the skills they needed. Because I can guarantee that if someone after today's session asked you what you learned in today's session, you'd be able to reel off the topics I talked about. But in a mind shift to this, to skills, we needed people to start thinking like that. So if we got them thinking about their current role, it's familiar. You're already doing it every day. So we're going to take that shift and go, okay, let's think about it from a skills point of view now. And we started to get them to rate themselves as well. So rating yourselves probably seems quite scary. A lot of our people suddenly went, hold on, is this a performance review? Is this going to be based on my performance? So we did a lot of work around making sure they were comfortable and confident in the fact that we really didn't care if they rated themselves beginner or expert. What this was doing in the platform is actually generating personalized content for them. So it meant that when they were going into this platform for the first time, they were familiar with things for their role. It was going to generate what they needed for that current role. We also made sure that what we were doing was putting in stuff for the business, so things they were familiar with. So we did start with some compliance training. They were familiar with that. It was bringing that familiarity. We also introduced content around our purpose, our 3 Ps, as we like to call them, people, planet, and profit. So it was, again, things we'd spoken around the business. So they were in that space where they were familiar with it. That once they got comfortable with that stage, it then meant that we could move on to phase 2. So phase 2 was all about us bringing learning into the flow of work. So this is where we started to shift to them not having to go to the platform anymore to work, but actually being able to make content accessible. So this is the bit where I was talking about where we wanted to bring it to where they were working. And we were able to do this with the Chrome extension, the Chrome and Edge extension that HowNow has, and also the mobile app. So it meant if people were working in Excel, for example, and they suddenly were like, oh, I've got to do a VLOOKUP, can't remember how to do that, they could get that knowledge there really quickly. It answered that one question, and then they were able to carry on with their work. So it was no longer that you've got to always go on a course or you've got to sit and watch an hour-long e-learning module. It was about getting those answers quickly where they needed them, when they needed them. Then when we looked at the skills side of things, we started to introduce development chats where people were now looking at their skill gaps. So they've done their rating. It was now let's talk about the skill gaps and let's actually bring this into real life model where we can think about how we can minimize those skill gaps. So people were picking focus skills. So their content was now more focused on what they wanted to really hone in the next 6 months. And probably my favorite part of the platform is the knowledge sharing element. We as L&D professionals aren't experts in everything. We can't be expected to know everything, and we normally have quite small teams, which means we can't push out that much content all the time. This feature allows us to make what we call contributors, so content contributors in the platform. It means that people all around the business are now able to insert content into the platform. Our experts don't need to come through us. they can start adding stuff. They can add documents, they can add videos. They still need to come to us for the SCORM stuff, but it means that actually the experts can put it in. It's in that language that our people are now familiar with. And the final phase that I'm going to talk to you about today is the phase that we have, turned it off now. The phase that we have just headed into now, which is our future skills phase. So this bit is talking about how we can start building for people's future development, whatever that may look like. And one of the really cool things we've been able to do is build what we call career pathways. Now, these to some of you might be known as competency frameworks. And as you know, earlier I mentioned they can normally take a long time. We were able to build career pathways that didn't just go up, but it meant that people can now go, I'm in marketing, I want to go to product. What does that look like for me? Where's that gap? What do I need to be doing? And so we were able to build these pathways in the space of a month for over 300 roles in our company. And then we were also able to start utilizing the reporting aspects to look at the skill gaps within the platform. So we were able to go, where are the gaps? And then start tying it to our business strategy and go, what are the future demands that we're going to need to keep up with our industry moving quickly and digital moving quickly? And then what we're going to be introducing is experts into the platform as well. So this means that those people in the platform that want to become maybe coaches or mentors on certain skills or topics can be visible to people. And that means that people can approach them on that specific skill. It's not they become your mentor for everything, but it's really targeted on things. And so by doing all of these things, it got me thinking back to that bit at the beginning I was talking around in how this makes L&D more investable. And what we've done in this case is we've moved away from some of the traditional things like time spent learning. Time spent learning isn't going to give us a return on investment. We don't know what people have learned from that. But what we can do is measure learning engagement. How are people interacting with the content? Where are they interacting? Is it actually the correct content? We can start seeing more of that. Course completed, again, just because they've completed it, it's not going to tell us if they've actually learned anything. But what we can look at is the content contributors and how fast people are pushing out content, what they're sharing, and then what people are interested in. So it's tying it back to that, and we can start really targeting our content. Our training needs analysis has changed a little bit as well. And we've been able to start targeting those skill gaps and the future gaps. So it means that we're no longer being reactive. We're not waiting for people to come to us. We're able to go ahead of this and say, actually, these are the skills that people are asking for now. And this is where we might see a future gap. And finally, we're not just measuring internal promotions. We're able to start looking at all levels of development. And that's because we can see the level of skill competency. We can see how many people in the business are competent in a skill, how many people might be experts, or how many people are actually saying, I'm around the beginner mark and I need some more support in this area. So it really starts to give us some more investable bits that we can take away. And for us, the skills bit is really key. As I said, it's a capital that you guys can take with you. You know, your skills are yours. If you move jobs, you take them with you. So we really want to be able to support people in that front. Now, I do appreciate I have spoken quite high level about what we've been doing, but our lovely friends at HowNow have created some copies of what we're calling our playbook. And this goes more into detail about everything from how we implemented the platform, we got the buy-in, our comms that we did around the platform, and the journey and the steps that I've talked a bit around today. You can grab your copies. They are just over to the left of me here. They've also got some digital downloads that you can take. I am going to be on the stand for a little bit after this if anyone does have any questions. I'm not sure how much time I've got at the moment, but I've got about 10 minutes. So has anyone got any questions at the moment? No? If you've got one? No? How does AI come into the platform? So that's a really good question. So AI is built into the platform, and one of the things that it does help with is the skills side of things. So what it does with the skills is it doesn't just look at your internal skills matrix. So when we were building that career pathway, it also scans externally. So it's looking at that job title outside of the market. And what that means is people are able to make sure they're keeping relevant with the skills in the company, but also keeping relevant with those skills externally. And it's a bit of information that we really wouldn't have had at our fingertips before, or would have taken quite a while to research and find out. If you don't have any other questions, thank you very much for listening today. As I said, I'll be over on HowNow stand if you've got any questions, or the team will be able to help you out if you want to find out more about the product. But thank you.